Welcome back into Foolish Club Media. I am Steven Serda, and normally on Tuesdays, I've been doing these kind of like news updates, Chiefs briefs, as someone called it in the podcast reviews, which I might steal because I haven't really named it yet. And I told you guys you could leave comments if you wanted to on a potential name for the news updates, unless I just wanted to steal the Arrowhead Drive from our old job at Arrowhead Pride. Which I'm still partial to that, but Chiefs briefs really not too bad. But special update pod today as the NFL schedule is set to release on Wednesday evening. Got a couple minor updates. We already know the Chiefs' first two opponents on the 2024 regular season schedule. And we got a couple of other like news things that I'm going to touch on real quickly before we dive into our full prediction of the Chiefs' regular season schedule. And I am very happy to be joined by my good friend, Joe Summers. You can follow him on Twitter at I am Joe Summers. He's doing incredible work for Fansided, KC Kingdom. So make sure you check them out on Twitter as well. Head over to their website, check out everything that he's doing. He's got all of Kansas City sports covered for you right now. You can follow KC Kingdom on Twitter at KC Kingdom FS or visit them at kckingdom.com. Joe, very excited to chat with you. It's been a while since we've actually done a podcast and had a conversation together.
It's been years. I've missed it. And I got to say, you might be onto something sponsorship-wise with Chiefs Briefs. Haynes might be in your future. It's not bad.
It's not bad. It's really not bad.
I like it. It's a pleasure to be on with you, sir. Congratulations on the Foolish Club Media. Love the work you guys have already put out, and I'm more than honored to be part of it. And it's good to see you. I like the background that you got cooking. I see that little Stormtrooper helmet there in the back. That's pretty nice as well. Yeah. Looking good over there.
We're still working and tinkering to get all of our stuff looking as good as possible, but I appreciate that. I think the team has been working their tails off. It's the dead part of the NFL offseason to the point where we're like, schedule release. Yes, there is news and there's things to talk about. So we're going to predict the full Chiefs regular season schedule on today's show. Before we get into that, and I don't want to spend too much time on this because I don't really have a lot of thoughts on this, but firstly, I'm not going to get into Harrison Butker's politics. He's been going out of his way for several years to be public about his awful politics. So I'm sure somebody's talking about that somewhere. If you want to get an opinion on that, I'm not really here for that kind of discussion. I want to have fun talking about the Chiefs schedule release. But Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Chiefs, one of the most frustrating players, I think, in the Patrick Mahomes era, but also a playoff hero who is a back-to-back Super Bowl champion, officially inks a deal with the Buffalo Bills. It's a one-year contract to join a depleted wide receiver room. So, Joe, thoughts on MVS? If you got anything on Butker, I'll take it real quick, but I don't think we really need to get into that stuff. But MVS heads over to Josh Allen, and I think Buffalo Bills fans, if they're excited about this at all, they're going to find out very quickly that he is one of the absolutely most frustrating regular season players you will ever come across in the NFL.
I'll save my Butker comments for another day. You can watch the video for yourself. Regarding MVS, honestly, he kind of feels like the perfect representation of the 2023 Chiefs season. Had, I believe it was 321 receiving yards in the regular season, and then came up with somewhere in the neighborhood of 116 and the touchdown in the Super Bowl in the playoffs. He had a terrible year in the regular season, but he got sweet redemption. He caught the pass against the Ravens to seal the game. He caught eight passes against the Bengals in the AFC title game the year prior. He's come up clutch in the playoffs, and I'll remember MVS as a frustrating regular season player, but it all worked out in the end. So good for him. I don't think he's going to achieve that same playoff success in Buffalo. I do think it's interesting that he kind of brings that vertical element that they now don't have with Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis gone, since Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir are kind of more inside slot players. I mean, good for him. I'm looking forward to traveling to Buffalo, and I'm looking forward to Trent McDuffie or Joshua Williams or Jalen Watson or maybe even my guy Kamal Hayden locking him up. I'm a little surprised he got up to the same amount of money as Tyler Boyd, though. I'm not going to lie to you. It kind of seems like Tyler Boyd was a steal on the market.
I totally agree with that. And I think that MVS is the type of player that's going to hang around the league for a few more years just on these one-year contracts. And he got a pretty big payday to join the Chiefs and win 2 Super Bowls and have high impact moments in the playoffs. So he's a player that, like Sammy Watkins, like we're only going to remember all of the things that helped get rings, and eventually we're going to forget about that brutal drop he had against the Eagles last year, or like some of the other just awful regular
already
season.
Forgot it.
Yeah. It's okay. That's all I want to say about Marquez Valdez-Scantling, because I do want to remember him fondly, but I was very critical of him the last 2 years here in Kansas City. So
that was the last Monday Night Football game that we played. And Joe Buck accidentally said this morning on Good Morning America that the Chiefs have 2 Monday Night Football games. So we'll get a chance at redemption. We could forget all about it pretty quickly.
So let's go ahead and get into our schedule prediction. I was telling you before the pod, and I put this together pretty quickly, and it took me a long time to settle on this schedule. So I have no idea if there's any level of accuracy you should take from this. This is just straight off of the dome, like what I'm remembering from past regular seasons, and like a schedule built on vibes, pretty much, based off the fact that we know who the Chiefs' week 1 and week 2 opponents are. They're going to open the NFL season on September 5th against the Baltimore Ravens to kick off the NFL season on Thursday Night Football. And then on September 15th in week 2, this one was kind of a shocker, Joe. They're going to take on the Cincinnati Bengals. Hopefully Joe Burrow is healthy to start the season, and we see that Bengals team at full strength, because those are always entertaining football games. But that's scheduled for 3:25 p.m. Central on CBS in week 2. And that was shocking. I think having back-to-back AFC North opponents and one that's as high profile as Cincinnati this early in the season kind of makes me, it was shocking. It's not what I expected at all, but I also think that the NFL knows those are high ratings games. Those are games that people are going to tune into. And last season they played the Bengals super late in the regular season. And it was the second straight year, I think, that they had done that, or the third straight year, something like that, where it was late in the regular season. And Joe Burrow wasn't healthy last year. So as long as he makes it through training camp uninjured this season, that we should get a week 2 matchup between Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow.
Yeah, and there's a few things. I was stunned as well. I texted you yesterday. I thought that the second week game was going to be the Atlanta Falcons, so I'm already 0 for 1. I thought that they were going to schedule a difficult game on Thursday night to open the season like the Ravens, and then give us, like an NFC one that doesn't really matter. That didn't happen at all. And maybe they are just trying to get the gorgeous Sunday afternoon in the middle at the end of September in Kansas City. Maybe they want to make sure that Joe Burrow is on the field. Maybe, just maybe, do they want to give the Chiefs 2 straight really difficult games to start against AFC contenders, so that, Charles Omenihu might not be there, Rashee Rice might not be there. Maybe the Chiefs are a little shorthanded. Ravens or Bengals beat the Chiefs, and then we have more interesting races down the line. There's a lot of possibilities, but I'm pumped up for it personally. I think that the Chiefs have an opportunity, and they're favored in both games, to put a stranglehold on the conference. Everyone already is going to be scared of the big bad wolf, and the Chiefs have an opportunity to go up 2-0 with a head-to-head tiebreaker against 2 of their biggest competitors in the conference, leaving basically Buffalo and Houston, which we'll get to play both of them. So I'm pumped up. If we come out of this 2-0, the Chiefs are going to be heavily favored, and sports pundits are going to be desperately trying to find a way to prop CJ Stroud up in the meantime.
And the opposite effect would also be beneficial for sports media if the Chiefs start 0-2. And
that's why they're doing it.
And it's back-to-back hangover. Mahomes is finally slowing down, and things are falling apart, and everybody will overreact to the first 2 weeks of the regular season. But part of the reason I wanted to have Joe on for this schedule release prediction is because I think that he is generally much better researched at these kinds of things. And he is the person that I go to for gambling advice typically, because he is much better at researching things and trying to find an edge in those kinds of things. And so my week 3 matchup is what you told me you thought week 2 was going to be for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I've got the Chiefs at Atlanta. The Falcons coming off a 7-10 season. So the Chiefs in week 3 traveling to Atlanta to take on the Falcons, who are in a regime change. They've got Kirk Cousins, drafted Michael Penix. Like, that feels like after that start, you got to throw them an NFC game that doesn't really have any impact on anything.
So I'm virtually certain that week 3 will be an NFC game. I originally thought that they were going to give the Chiefs Falcons on Sunday Night Football in week 2 to showcase Kirk Cousins coming into the league, or coming into a new team rather, that's competitive against the champs. That didn't happen. So if I'm being honest, I think they might save. So we're on the road, at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. And that's a dome, the last I checked. I think they might save the Falcons game for when Mahomes, could only play cold home games. I think they might want dome Mahomes later in the season while the Falcons need some kind of interesting games, because they're running away with a decrepit NFC South where the Saints, who will also play, is on the list. So once we saw the Bengals were week 2, I had to move away from Atlanta, though I do think it's very possible. So I think the pendulum swing that we might see, especially because we're on Sunday afternoon against the Bengals, I think the pendulum swing just is do you want a three-peat? Well, try this on for size. I think we might have the Bills in week 3 on Monday Night Football in September. Not only because it'll continue the Chiefs' difficult road, but also, if I'm the NFL, if I am the owner of the Bills, I am doing everything in my power to avoid Bills home games in the cold months of December and at the very beginning of January. After this playoff disaster with how cold it was in Kansas City, how cold it was in Buffalo, I think they'll want to get that home game of Chiefs versus Allen out of the way early. So I'm going Bills week 3 on Monday Night Football.
I don't know, man. That's a ballsy call. I will give you that. That would be a crazy stretch to start the regular season for the Chiefs. And already too, if you forgot about last season, like the Chiefs virtually just play an all primetime game schedule, and it's not just Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night. It's those 3:25 national windows on Sunday. And I think the Chiefs had 2 noon games last season, and one of them was a game that got flexed out because the Patriots were garbage. And so it's like the Chiefs are pretty much always going to be in a national window. I think they played the Bears early in the season, and that was like a noon kickoff. That was like their only other one all year. So we know they're going to be on national television because they're America's new team right now. But those 3 straight games to start the season, that feels like a risky call. But I like it. I do dig it. That would be an incredibly tough stretch to start the season for the Chiefs.
They have to protect these cold fans from themselves. It makes sense. Give them the September game.
I don't think the NFL cares about Buffalo fans. And
they care about the maybe lawsuit.
You do this to yourself. But yeah, Chiefs fans did get some frostbite last year. So that might be an issue. Before we move to week 4, I just want to mention really quick, ESPN just officially announced that former Eagles, future Hall of Famer Jason Kelce, has signed a multi-year deal. He will join Monday Night Countdown leading into Monday Night Football, then appear again at halftime. He'll be a part of ESPN and ABC's coverage of the Super Bowl in Los Angeles in 2027. So whenever the Chiefs wind up playing on Monday Night Football this year, maybe we'll see a little bit of Jason Kelce rooting on Travis Kelce from the booth or something like that. So that would be very cool. But moving on, week 4. So week 4, I think with the Chiefs opening first 2 weeks, the regular season home games, week 3, we both agree it's going to be a road contest. So week 4, I've still got them on the road again, but I'm throwing a divisional matchup in there early because we usually get a couple early ones before the bye week, and then they like to schedule the AFC West matchups again, like later in the season. So I think we're going to get some midway and at the tail end of the season like they always do. So week 4, I've got the Chiefs at Broncos. We still don't totally know who is the Broncos starting quarterback. Probably going to be Bo Nix. I tend to think the Broncos are going to be a really bad football team, but they finished last season 8-9. So I've got the Chiefs traveling to Denver for a divisional round division matchup in week 4.
I definitely respect that. I'm going to wait a little bit on my divisional games because instead I'm going to go with the Chiefs traveling to the Browns to take on Cleveland. So, conspiracy theory hat on here. This will be around the time that the Cleveland Guardians could be entering the postseason. They're currently leading the AL Central. Cleveland has, the best record right now in the division, around the time that they would be starting the playoffs. The Kelseys are probably going to be in attendance around this time. But at the same time, Travis Kelce's new show on FX, the horror TV show, it's also slated to start at the end of September. So there's going to be kind of like a combo thing. So I'm imagining that Kelce's going back to Cleveland both for a Guardians game and his TV premiere when he gets this little hometown red carpet. And as a result, they're going to want him to play against the Browns or at the same time. So week 4 at the Cleveland Browns.
So you think through 4 weeks of the NFL season, they're going to play 3 AFC North contests in the first month for the Kansas City Chiefs?
So. I do.
I've got the Browns later on the schedule. I don't disagree with the logic there. I think that actually makes a lot of sense, and it's a lot more.
Now that you said 3 AFC North teams, I do kind of regret it, but I'm too far in.
It's a lot of AFC North teams in the first month of the season. So I do agree with the logic, and I do think the Browns are going to be a competitive football team, just like they were last year. We'll see if Deshaun Watson can ever return to something close to his former self, if he can stay healthy, or if it's going to be Jameis Winston at some point. But they still have a talented defense and a talented roster. So we'll see what happens in week 4. In week 5, I've got the Chiefs returning to Arrowhead Stadium to take on the New Orleans Saints. The Saints finished last year 9-8, and I don't have a ton of thoughts on the New Orleans Saints. They're the same Saints team that they've been for the last 6 years, where probably going to hover around 500, probably going to be a scrappy team that's annoying to play. And at the end of the day, they got Derek Carr, and that's just not going to be good enough to actually beat good teams.
I'm not too far away from you. I've got the Chiefs hosting the Bucks in this game. I think it just feels like one of those fillers, throwing an NFC South game in there. I will say if you like Baker Mayfield, the Bucks are an interesting team to start buying some futures on, because everyone is talking about the Falcons with Kirk Cousins. You've got the Derek Carr Saints that I don't believe in. I mean, the Bucks might wind up, competing in the division round once again. We'll find out. I think it'll be a good test, especially after what I project to be a tough stretch.
I do think Tampa Bay is a little underrated. Just inked Antoine Winfield Jr. to a massive contract extension. They had a good draft class. They're a really good drafting organization in general, and don't get enough credit for what they did last season, with their offensive line and everything. Obviously, they lost their offensive coordinator, but I still think Tampa Bay is going to be super competitive. So I don't hate that. I've got them a little bit later on the schedule. And week 6 is where I finally have the Chiefs at Buffalo. The Bills finishing last year 11-6, losing to the Chiefs in the playoffs again. This is obviously going to be a primetime game in some capacity. There's just no way that Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes isn't going to be under the Sunday Night Football lights or Monday Night Football or something like that.
If you gave me odds to bet that Chiefs Bills is a Monday night game, I'd be all over it. Whether it's week 4 or week 6, I completely agree. Especially if you're getting it in before the snow. So I'm going to go for week 6. Let's see. This is going to be mid-October. We're going to go with one more road game before we return home. We are going to make a little NFC South trip and go to the Panthers, sliding in right around the time that they could be falling apart. And the questions about Bryce Young, should the Panthers tank to draft Quinn Ewers or whoever it may be? The perfect way to schedule those takes, if you're a sports show, is to say, hey, if he has 5 weeks of struggles, let me throw him against Steve Spagnuolo, and Steve Spagnuolo can send him into the torture chamber. So after week 6, you'll see Stephen A. Smith lead off a show with should the Panthers bench Bryce Young because of what the Chiefs did to him on the road.
I like that. And yeah, it's the Panthers are going to be so bad. And I still am not ready to say it's because of Bryce Young. I think they were so bad last season, and maybe they made some improvements this offseason, but I still think they're going to be absolutely awful. And it's totally unfair to put Chris Jones and Steve Spagnuolo and all the weapons that he has at his disposal against Bryce Young. It's just not going to be good for the Panthers, but I do like what Dave Canales did last season. So let's see if he can get any kind of improvement there for the Panthers. In week 7, I've got the Chiefs at Chargers. First matchup against LA. It's away. Chargers finishing 5-12, hiring Jim Harbaugh, like total regime change, total rebuild. They're going to run the football instead of try to throw it with Justin Herbert because they got no wide receivers that you can count on really anyways, unless you believe in Lad McConkey or Quentin Johnson having a huge second year. But I still think the Chargers are going to be one of those teams that you could see the dramatic improvement from Harbaugh coming in, or you could see them fall totally flat and they could just be the worst team in the AFC West.
I think that they're going to take incremental steps forward. I like Lad McConkey. I don't love that your top options are Lad McConkey, Joshua Palmer, and Gerald Everett. I think they still have. So I think they're going to be incrementally better. I think they might finish second in the division by default because of the Bo Nix and Aiden O'Connell.
Gerald Everett went to Chicago. I don't even know who their tight end is.
There you go. They got Quentin Johnston still. They got a whole bunch of nobodies. So I'm not worried about the Chargers whatsoever. I do think, though, that the NFL is going to try to capitalize on some of the later season excitement about Harbaugh's national championship at Michigan that has zero things to do about whether or not he'll be successful with the Chargers. But that's not neither here nor there. Instead, I'm going to go with the Chiefs returning home after a few consecutive road games. We are going to host the Broncos this week. Host the Broncos. Get the first divisional game out of the way. I think we'll go on the road to Mile High later in the year. And it'll give the Chiefs a little bit of a reprieve after what I think is going to be a brutal first 4 games as they try to maximize that Mahomes, Kelsey screen time carryover before Kelsey might inevitably be, sat for a while to preserve him for the playoffs.
Yeah, could totally see that. And week 8, I've got Chiefs at San Francisco 49ers. I think that's another easy primetime game, Super Bowl rematch. 49ers still one of the top teams in the NFL, expected to be one of the best teams in the NFL and legitimate contender. I picked that one there for a specific reason, and it's because I've got the Chiefs on bye in week 9. And so I feel like the Chiefs always play a big primetime game right before they head into a bye week. And I think it was going back the last 4 or 5 years, the Chiefs haven't had a bye before week 8. So it felt like a good time to slot in primetime matchup against a Super Bowl contending team and then head into a bye week in week 9.
Counterpoint, schedule makers know that we're going to make the playoffs, so they're not going to schedule that going this early. So instead, I'm going to go with the Chiefs traveling on the road to take on the Raiders this week. Get another divisional game out of the way before that primetime game going into the bye. So the Chiefs get their revenge against Vegas.
Okay, so I can see that. I've got them on bye in week 9. Who do you have them taking on? Because I've got the Raiders at the Chiefs in week 10 following the bye week.
So this is when I think they're going to drop that Texans matchup in there. Give me a Texans primetime matchup. This is just enough time for C.J. Stroud to firmly challenge Patrick Mahomes in the MVP race. Stephon Diggs has gotten used to the system. Tank Dell doesn't have the injury risk coming back. This is when the Texans could be rolling. So give me Chiefs at hosting the Texans before that bye week. And then we'll go to the road in San Francisco when the weather's cold everywhere else.
I really wanted the Chiefs to open the season against the Houston Texans just because I think
I did too.
They're the most exciting young team in football, and maybe you can make the case for the Green Bay Packers or something like that. But I truly believe it's the Houston Texans and CJ Stroud and everything that DeMeco Ryans did last year, and they beefed up everywhere across the board and made improvements in their roster. But later in the season does make sense because you want to give the Texans a chance to prove it first and let them kind of hit their stride. And so you can build up to that game and find out, because we've been chasing this. Who is Patrick Mahomes' real rival? Is it Lamar Jackson? Is it Joe Burrow? Is it Josh Allen? Is it Justin Herbert? And it's maybe it's CJ Stroud now. And so they're going to try
next man up.
Yeah. Because
he's got the offensive weapons to do it. I mean,
yes.
With Bobby Slowick, the Texans are coming. I got more faith in the Texans than the Bengals right now, honestly.
So I already mentioned Yeah, I do too. Like I am all in on the Houston Texans. Like that offense is going to be amazing to watch, and their defense. I can't stress this enough. Like their defense did not have playmakers last year outside of a couple of dudes, and D'Amico Ryans is just such a good defensive play caller that defense with the roster that they had and the personnel they had absolutely no business being as competitive as it was. And so now they beefed up everywhere they needed to along the defensive line in the secondary. Like that defense is going to be really good. And I'm excited to watch the Houston Texans play football this year. So I already mentioned week 10, I got Raiders at Chiefs. Who do you have them taking on in the week 10 contest? You still have your bye week available.
This would be when I think we're on the bye week. Yeah, Texans into bye week.
Okay, that makes sense. I think we're both on the same page about like a big primetime matchup, then the bye week. That's typically how they roll with the Kansas City Chiefs. So week 11, I've got the Chiefs at Browns here because it feels like it feels like we do this every year with the Chiefs, where they early in the season they've got some really big primetime matchups, and they kind of head into a bye, and out of a bye, they're still going to have some big high profile contests and stuff down the line, but you kind of get a couple of these games in between where it's like, yeah, the Browns are going to be a good team, they're going to be a competitive team, but I don't think anybody thinks that the Browns are anywhere close to like the class of the Chiefs. So this feels like post bye, post Raiders feels like a perfect slot to slide in the Cleveland Browns.
The Browns are competing squarely with the Steelers as like the best average team in the league. Yeah, no, absolutely not. I'm going to go still in the AFC North. Go ahead and knock this last one off. I'm going on the road against Pittsburgh here.
Okay. So
they got the Steelers, Justin Fields' future team.
Yeah. So that's actually my week 12 matchup is Chiefs at Steelers. And I didn't realize that I put back-to-back. So we got back-to-back AFC North to start and then back-to-back AFC North once we get out of the break. I didn't realize that I did that, and now I feel questionable about it, but I'm rolling with it anyway. So I've got Chiefs Steelers week 12, and that is a really interesting matchup, and it's curious to see how things play out because I do think Pittsburgh had a nice draft class. I thought that the things that they've done to overhaul the roster and actually admitting like we messed up with Kenny Pickett and changing things over, I didn't think the Steelers had that in them. I really didn't. I thought they were just going to keep trotting Kenny Pickett out there and being absolutely mediocre in every sense of the word. But now they're an intriguing team, not with Russell Wilson as the starting quarterback, but I have to believe that Justin Fields is going to become the starter at some point because I just feel like you're going to get a lot of the same that we saw with Russ in the Denver Broncos from the past few years, where he's really, really frustrating to watch. He is a hard player to watch at this stage in his career. Holds onto the football way too long, eats sacks like crazy, has like 1-2 reads, never gets rid of it. And he is one of the most frustrating, least entertaining brands of football that anyone at the quarterback position is playing right now.
Tell me how you really feel. I can't stand.
That didn't start with me initially planning on just absolutely decimating Russell Wilson, but Justin Fields should be the starter. We got to play this game.
I can't say either, and I firmly believe the Chiefs will win this game. But I do have to say that this might be one of the upset alert games for the Chiefs, because if you don't think they're going undefeated, but you think they'll start the season hot, then they got to lose a game that we don't expect them to. And part of the reason I think it's going to be a difficult start to the schedule is, if we're being honest, the Chiefs are probably going to coast for a significant portion of this season. Last year taught us that they don't really have to try that hard in the regular season. Show up for the playoffs and you're good to go. So I think the NFL is trying to schedule difficult games to start so that we're trying. And then when NFL is in full swing and the ratings king, then things can kind of slow down a little bit with some easier matchups, especially if Travis Kelce starts to show any signs of injury. I think they'll be really cautious, want to rest him for the playoffs. So that middle season lull around the bye week kind of makes sense for one of those little stinkers that the Chiefs are known to lay every year at some point or another. So I think that the Steelers might be able to take him down just as one of those, well, I didn't expect that to happen type of games.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more interesting contest on paper than I think most fans would initially read into it, because it's a very different Pittsburgh Steelers team from the Kenny Pickett teams that you've seen over the last couple of years. Did you give me your Week 12 matchup? I don't remember. I don't know. I don't remember if I got it lost on my tirade.
Which
about
one did you? What? I don't think you did. Who'd you have?
I had Chiefs at Steelers in Week 12, and you had Chiefs at Steelers in Week 11.
Okay, so no, I haven't. So you had Chiefs and Steelers. Then I'm going to go. We're going to knock out the road Denver game in this one. We're going to travel to Mile High here.
Okay, yeah, I think that makes
and then we'll
that
prepare
makes
to play in
sense.
some cold. So we'll play cold at home and warm on the road. It'll be perfect to prepare for the playoffs when we have the 1 seed again.
I think that's around when they played Denver last season, like kind of like played them early, and then I think they played them again like a couple of weeks later. But it was kind of like over the midseason hump. So that sounds about right for where the Denver Broncos would typically be slotted in. In Week 12 or Week 13, I've got Chargers at Chiefs, another home contest in LA, and Justin Herbert, see where they're at that point in the season. But got to get those Chargers contests out of the way, and the Chiefs absolutely dominate the AFC West.
So we're actually in the same boat here. I'm going Chargers at Chiefs in this one as well to set up the road game when the weather's nicer in LA. So I'm right there with you. I hope we get this one. Lockstep, first one.
That's the first one. It is going to be embarrassing if the only things we get right are the things that are already announced. So hopefully at least the Chargers one stays.
I believe in us. We have to get one.
So Week 14 is where I've got the Houston Texans down. And I think when I started building this, I initially had them earlier in the season because I was like, that feels like, primetime game, get a quick early season build up. And then the first 2 games kind of made me backtrack a little bit. And I was like, yeah, but the Chiefs are going to have one of those later season primetime games. And like I mentioned earlier, like gives the Texans some time to prove it and be like, yeah, we are a legitimate contender in the AFC. We are one of the best teams in football. CJ Stroud is an elite young quarterback in the league. So Week 14, Texans at Chiefs, it's going to be a primetime game. That's got Sunday Night Football written all over it in my mind.
Well, we have 2 Monday night games, according to Joe Buck. So
they had
could be a Monday night game as well.
Night games last year, so
a bunch. I'm going to go with the Niners here on the road. So I'm currently workshopping whether or not I'm going to pick the Chiefs over the Bears or the Chiefs over the Packers in the Super Bowl. Over the last 10 seasons, every single NFC representative in the Super Bowl was a new team, like did not repeat the previous year. So if you like the Niners to win or to make the Super Bowl, win the NFC, they'd have to overcome 10 years of evidence. I think it'll be a new team. I think it's the Bears or the Packers. I don't know which. I think that schedule makers are going to make this 49ers game try to be a primetime one, and then the Niners are going to slightly disappoint due to something they don't know yet. So going Niners.
Bears, Caleb Williams, rookie quarterback in the Super Bowl would be
them or the Packers. Those are I'm picking between one of the two.
The Packers, I think. Not the Lions. You don't have any faith in the Lions being able to get over the hump this year?
I do. I think they're an NFC title game.
Okay.
And then the Jared Goff limitation will show itself against the better quarterback in Jordan Love or Caleb Williams.
Yeah, especially if they have to go on the road in the playoffs in the cold. Like, you can just see that failing. And as much
go to Chicago, go to Green Bay. Oh, yeah. It's exactly what we've seen.
So Week 15, I've got the Chiefs at the Carolina Panthers. This is like, I think they played the Patriots in Week 15 or Week 16 last year. So this just feels like a post-bye, probably going to be like a 3-win football team that they absolutely dominate. That you got out of the way early in the schedule, and I'd just say for later.
Let's see. Week 15, I'm going to go with hosting NOLA. Okay. We are hosting the Saints in Week 15.
So we're pretty
revenge game.
We're pretty lockstep in where we decided to place our NFC games for the most part. Because
just a matter of which team in the division.
And neither of those games is a fun football game. Like, nobody's going to be absolutely juiced to play the Panthers or the Saints. Like, there's absolutely no juice to either of those opponents. So in Week 16, I've got the Chiefs at the Denver Broncos. it just feels like late season. The Chiefs always have a couple of AFC West matchups that they save for later in the year. And spoiler alert, my Week 18 game is going to be an AFC West matchup because that's the way the NFL always ends it for some reason. So Week 16, I've got Chiefs at Broncos.
I am also going with a divisional game, but I am going with us hosting the Raiders in our final home game. Final home game right around Christmas. Host the Raiders. Seems like we always host a divisional game right around Christmas. So that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
And the home schedule before it gets too cold. They're going to try to avoid that Dolphins catastrophe, I'm telling you.
And I did not do very much research onto like past year's Chiefs schedule, but in my quick look up, I was pretty surprised and I guess I knew it, but hadn't really thought about it. Like the Chiefs tend to play road games in the final week of the regular season. Maybe it's just because it's, typically they're already locked into the playoffs. And so you're pretty much guaranteed to not get the starters unless they're playing for something. And so it's just like, who cares at that point? Like when they played the Chargers last season in Week 18. But Week 17, that's where I've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming to Kansas City. That's another game where it's like you just got to get the NFC opponent out of the way. But the Bucs could be interesting at that point because I totally agree that they're like a fringe playoff team who could be competitive for a late season game that's got a little bit more juice behind it than you might initially think.
2 straight NFC South games. Yeah. I'm going to go here with road to the Falcons. They're going to save that sweet, precious dome weather for the end of the season when the Falcons have a chance to compete for the NFC South crown, or they need the Chiefs to win so that the Falcons are forced into a competitive Week 18 game against the Saints or someone like that.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I didn't factor in any of the dome logic into this stuff. So I do think it's a sound way to go about it. So maybe I should have put the Falcons in Week 17 instead of the Bucs, but whatever. Week 18, final week of the regular season. I've got the Kansas City Chiefs at the Las Vegas Raiders. Like I mentioned, the Chiefs just tend to end the regular seasons on the road, and I have to imagine it's typically because there's other games, there's other divisions on the line with playoff seeding and things that are going to get the primetime spots and the big stages. And the Chiefs over the last several years in the Patrick Mahomes era just have that stuff locked up already, and they don't really have to worry about it. So I've got them traveling on the road to take on the Raiders in the final week of the regular season.
I'm going Chiefs at Chargers 10. Similar logic. I think the NFL thinks that the Chargers might have a shot at the playoffs in that final week if the Chiefs are resting. Then, maybe they squeak in there. We've got our schedule. I've got to ask you, what's your predicted record? Who's winning MVP? What's your Super Bowl matchup?
Ooh, I haven't thought about any of this. So this is interesting. I'm going to go 13-4 for the Chiefs. I think this team is better than it was last year. And I do totally agree. They're going to have a mid-season lull where they just seem disinterested, play down to their opponents. Like that should not shock anyone. And last season, it was most frustrating because I was like, this is the worst overall team in the Patrick Mahomes era, but this defense is so good. They should not be this bad. And the defense was incredible all season long and still was overlooked, even though like by the playoffs, we were like, okay, they're going to go win a Super Bowl now because Mahomes is going to turn it on for the postseason. And the defense is the best defense in football, but nobody's giving them any credit. Losing L'Jarius Sneed is obviously a blow, but I have total faith in Steve Spagnuolo and Dave Merritt and that secondary. And I'm really excited about Shamari Connor. So I don't think their secondary is even going to take that dramatic of a step back. I think the defense is still going to be elite. Offense is better. We'll see what happens with Rashee Rice. So I think the Chiefs are going to return back to elite form with a couple of stinkers throughout the regular season, but go 13-4, wind up being the top seed in the AFC.
I'm going to go 14-3. I think they're going to approach it as a, screw you type of season. This is our chance to leave our legacy in the NFL history books, become the first team in NFL history to win 3 straight Super Bowls. I think they'll look at it that way. And if the schedule works out like I think it will, it'll be hard at the beginning when they're interested, soft when they're disinterested, and then, be ready for the playoffs. So I'm going to go 14-3. I think that someone like a CJ Stroud or maybe even a Josh Allen with worse weapons wins MVP to try to create that narrative. And the next year is when Pat wins another MVP. But I'm going to go Chiefs. I'm going to go Chiefs over Packers in the Super Bowl. That's what I got for you right now. Chiefs over Packers.
I think I totally agree with you on Stroud, and I feel like that's going to be kind of a chalky like underdog MVP pick because nobody wants to pick Patrick Mahomes because he's just at the top of the list every single year now. Or, Lamar Jackson or one of these other teams or Joe Burrow or Josh Allen. Like, I think CJ Stroud is like the easy person that I would pick, like most likely to take that step because I'm not getting fooled by Trevor Lawrence again. That is absolutely not going to happen this season. And I think Super Bowl, I think it's going to be Chiefs Lions, and the Chiefs finish off the three-peat.
Chiefs over Lions. I like it.
I love what the Lions did this offseason too. Like every addition that they made in free agency, I love the draft class. Like their offensive line and all of those skill players are going to be back. They improved virtually everywhere, and their defense was terrible last season, but they made all of the moves to try to improve it. I just feel like that's enough to get them over the hump, even with Jared Goff. And Jared Goff's played in the Super Bowl before, but then he's going to go up against the Kansas City Chiefs and Steve Spagnuolo like he did Bill Belichick, and Bill Belichick and Steve Spagnuolo is just absolutely going to shut him down. So I still like the Lions, but I don't hate your Packers pick. I really think the Packers are going to be a fun team this year.
I don't hate the Lions pick. I think it's going to come down to one of these quarterbacks just taking the mantle because Dak had an opportunity and dropped it right at Jordan Love's feet.
Roster is worse heading into the season.
I'll tell you, if the Bears employed any other head coach, I'd probably be picking them. I think they're going to be dangerous. Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, Keenan Allen, like that is a nasty offensive playmaking group. It's just I don't know if I can trust Eberflus over LaFleur.
Yeah, they should have moved on from him. I think it was a mistake to bring him back, but we don't need to get in the Chicago Bears. So that is our Chiefs 2024 regular season schedule prediction. Please, as always, subscribe, rate, review, follow us on YouTube at Foolish Club Media, follow us on Twitter at Club Foolish. We really appreciate all the support you guys have shown us so far. Going to keep this thing going all summer and build until we get to the regular season. So anyway, you can support us. We thoroughly appreciate it. And it means the absolute world to everybody here on the podcast network. Joe, my man, appreciate you as always. Again, follow Joe at I Am Joe Summers. Follow all of his work at kckingdom.com. He's doing tremendous stuff. If you are a Kansas City sports fan, Joe's got everything you need to know. So make sure you head on over there. Joe, I hope I get more games right on the schedule than you did, and your schedule prediction sucks.
Well, I mean, considering that our Week 13 game was the same, I hope we both hit that one. But I'm gonna stomp all over you, and then beers are gonna be on you. I appreciate you having me on. It's awesome to see you grow Foolish Club Media. I'm really pumped to see where you guys go with everything, and couldn't have a better person in charge. So I appreciate you, my brother, and I look forward to stomping all over you on this prediction.
Again, follow him on Twitter at I Am Joe Summers. Check out all of his fantastic work. Thank you guys for listening. Coming up on Wednesday afternoon, we will have the latest edition of the Great British Chief Show. Brad and Tom definitely going to have some things to joke about. Definitely going to entertain you in every possible way, talking about your favorite football team in the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll talk to you guys then.